Aditya Sharma, as we were talking, you mentioned about the challenges of writing short stories as against a novel. Could you elaborate a bit on that, please?
Yeah, as I realized the hard way when I was working, I'm still working on this collection of short stories. I've written around 10 short stories. I think 2-3 I've already got published in papers like Statesman, Sahara Time.
I see.
But when I got, after 1, 2, 3 stories, I realized that the message I'm trying to convey, the thing I'm trying to bring out in say 2000, 3000 words, that's not coming out sharply. So I started reading more short stories to realize how to get your message across to your readers in a sharper way, in a simple way, not to confuse the readers. And because you just have 5-10 pages to say your whatever you want to say. And then I realized it's such a hard job to write a short story because you have to say one incident in few pages, and the other thing is it's not easy. You can start an incident, but a short story requires 3 things. You have to start it in an interesting way.
Yeah.
You have to have an interesting middle in that, where the tensions heighten or the readers are drawn into the lives of the character. So that middle is also required, very much required. This is a good beginning is required. And finally, you need to have a good ending also. Because without the ending, a short story, I feel it loses its sting. And when you read modern short stories, you realize there are no endings in short stories. And when I read modern writers, I myself am baffled by this thing. Why couldn't they end it? And they say they try to be true to life, and so in life, sometimes it's open and the things don't end in a very perfect way. That's all fine. It doesn't end in a perfect way, but they do end in imperfect ways, and that has to be there. The reader needs a closure. So I realized, to give a closure, you have to think too much actually, and you can have 10 different endings. And at the same time, you have to be true to life. You can't just invent endings. The ending should be natural. So I don't try to make up ideally, but if I have to make up in 1 or 2 stories because they were not ending properly, I tried to end up in a way which was natural, which was close to the characters' traits, and it was believable, of course. But usually I try to put the facts as they are, and I myself go to interview all the characters I write. I don't write stories just with a vague imagination. I always first listen to an incident, and if that incident interests me enough, I ask my friends or whoever has told me that incident, can you introduce me to the person?
Oh.
So what happens in most cases, people don't want to talk about themselves much, and since it's about their private lives, so I have had hard times convincing them to reveal me more. I remember one boy in Meerut. I went to his place to talk about him because he had married a prostitute.
I see.
And he was the son of an NSP.
NSP?
Superintendent of Police.
Okay.
And his father had beaten him up, and there was a lot of controversy. But he went against his father's wishes and married this woman.
I see.
Just because she had 2 girls, and this boy, he didn't want those girls to get into the same business.
I see.
So I went to him, and he was very hesitant to talk to me because first he realized I was a journalist. So people are scared of sometimes journalists because they might print them in newspapers or magazines. But when I assured him, he opened up.
Yeah.
But this doesn't happen always.
Yeah.
So I try to interview people and then write stories about them. And I realize it's not easy.
Who are your favorite short story writers? Indian,
among
foreign?
Indian, I have always enjoyed reading R.K. Narayan, Ruskin Bond, and Khushwant Singh.
Yeah.
I think these 3 are my favorite short story writers.
Non-English?
And also Satyajit Ray.
Yeah.
Among non-English has been Premchand and Manto. these two. I don't think there are better short story writers than
I see.
these writers in India. And among foreign writers, I have always enjoyed Chekhov a lot.
I see.
Then there is Somerset Maugham. Then there
Yeah.
is Maupassant. Then there is Saki, and I think there is Jack London. Some stories by Gorky, Tolstoy, and I think there's another very good short story writer. I'm forgetting the name. What's his name? He used to came and it went.
No
I'm
problem.
not
It'll come.
recollecting. Roald Dahl.
Roald Dahl.
Roald Dahl. So he is again a favorite of mine.
Do any of these consciously or otherwise influence your writing?
Yeah, because they used to accept Roald Dahl, who used to write about darker sides, and the humor
Yeah.
was a little a bit different from realistic angle, away from that. But writers like Chekhov, writers like Somerset Maugham, or Gorky, they were very true to lives, real lives. So they used to listen to stories around them and then write about them. There was no,
Creation.
no imagination in
Yeah.
the sense that there was no. They didn't make up those stories.
Yeah.
They were true to lives. They only had to
Embellished.
write them down and maybe embellish a little bit.
Yeah.
And there was in Chekhov's stories there was such rich humor,
I see.
which I haven't found in I don't know in any writer actually. The humor he could make you laugh with his stories, with his characters. They were so neatly, written and sharply etched out that it's rare you don't read these kind of writers. And whenever I ask people around me, can you introduce me to writers like Chekhov?
I see.
So I don't get any answer. And recently I was asking this question to a New Yorker fiction editor. I met her in a literary festival. So she was also she was thinking hard, and she had nobody except she told me one name, William Travers. He's from Ireland, and I've read one or two of his stories, and I think he's good.
Aditya, do you think that different languages have different traditions? I mean, how does Hindi short story writing compare, say, to English? Since you know both these languages so well.
See, in Hindi, there have been the most prominent short story writer has been Prem Chand, which I've read, and he usually wrote about small towns and villages, people struggling there, and poverty-stricken people who didn't have enough. So, whereas in English, as I was just telling you, most English writers are from urban backgrounds. Like if you talk about Indian writers, so they will write about urban people living in cities. Whereas Hindi story writers, they write about the villages, they write about small towns, and
I see.
they highlight their problems. So I think in India, that's the major difference. But I'm sure because now English is now getting into small towns in a big way. There are too many schools, English schools there. So I think slowly we'll get to hear more stories in English about villages and small towns.
True. And you said something about poverty and the writers.
Yeah, that's what Ruskin Bond told me once, because Ruskin Bond, he lived a life of poverty, I think, till he was 50, if not acute poverty, but still he didn't have too much spare
Okay.
money. And he told me once, if you want to be a writer, then you live a writer's life. You don't have to, the writer's life always involves some struggles, and you have to be in streets, not in sitting in an ACs and getting a fat check every month. You have to go out in the streets, you have to meet people from all walks of life. So you have to meet, you might be interviewing or talking to a police constable one day, or the another day you might be talking to, say, a minister.
Yeah.
So you have to meet a variety of people to broaden your perspective, and poverty is one way which puts you in the on the streets where you are out. For instance, I was coming from Bombay to Goa
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
so I choose to travel in a sleeper,
Wow.
and the reason was I didn't have enough to
Yeah.
because I've left my job
Yeah.
about 1.5 years ago. So I realized the kind of people I met in the sleeper class, they were willing to share a lot more about themselves than I'm sure if people travel in
True.
AC compartments, they actually compartmentalize themselves,
Isolation.
and they like their privacies, and so it's not easy to know them. And a writer's job is to know people. So I think it's easier if you are among.
Interesting, very interesting. Knowing you, I know what a great networker you are and how you keep in touch with people, at least as far as we both go. But do you know Ruskin Bond a lot? You met him many times?
a lot.
Many times?
Yeah, too many times. In fact, I met him 2 months back. I was at his place.
So you're personal friends?
You can't say we are personal friends, but he
knows you.
He bears me in a way. I end up going to his house.
So how many times have you met him?
Must be over 50 times.
50 times?
Yeah.
50?
Because I started meeting him in 2001. That was the first time I met him. And I went there, as I was just telling you, with my manuscript of a short story, and thinking, he will give me some tips, and I'll be a great writer like him.
Overnight.
Yeah, overnight. And then I realized, writing is not that easy. Firstly, you need to have talents. No school can teach you writing a story, or a novel. You need to have the talent within you. And the other things are the command on the language. Those are secondary.
Yeah.
The first thing is about your personality. Are you interested in human beings?
Yeah.
Because I have met some writers lately. They have a great command on the language.
Yeah.
And the command is just mesmerizing, the kind of words they use. But they're not sufficiently interested in fellow human beings.
I see.
And that's what is, I think, that's a major thing which is required to be a fiction writer. If you are a non-fiction writer, that's another thing. But if you want to write novels and short story, you need to be sufficiently interested in human beings, not forcing yourself to be interested in them, but it should come out naturally.
Tell us which story of yours you like the best.
You mean the short story?
Yeah.
The short story will come, no?
Yeah, but no, I mean which you wrote. Anything you wrote, whether published or otherwise.
Yeah, one story I think it's very. I enjoyed writing it a lot. It was about a goods train guard.
I see.
So I interviewed that guard, and he was all the time telling me not to reveal his name because he had done something stupid.
Okay.
And what he had done was, they are not allowed to take somebody in their compartment.
Right.
But he had allowed a guy who was pleading with him to take him to Delhi. So he had allowed him to board his cabin.
Okay.
And but then he had asked him a favor also. He said, "Look, I'm so tired. I'm drunk now.
Yeah.
So can you help me in a way?" He said, "See, I'll help you reach Delhi. So you help me in one way.
Yeah.
And that's you help me catch me on my sleep.
Okay.
And moreover, I'm dead drunk tonight." He had maybe 2 or 3 pegs of whiskey, whatever. So he said, "I want to sleep."
Yeah.
So all you have to do is to wave the light at the track to the station masters and gatemen on the way.
Okay.
They'll think the guard is there, and I'll sleep comfortably. But what happens was it's a kind of comedy, not tragedy.
Okay.
Because you see, a train always keeps jerking, especially the goods train.
Yeah.
So at one point, because he was already drunk, there was a big jerk, and this guard, he fell off the train.
Off the train?
Yeah.
True story?
Yeah, it's a true story. And the other guy who is on the in his cabin, the train is moving slowly as goods train moves. So he wanted to help him, but because he had to reach Delhi as his mother was in the hospital, he was torn between two things: whether to help the guard or to be on the train to reach his mother. Then he realized, mother is more sacrosanct and more, and so he decided to be on the train. And he kept on waving the green light. I'm revealing the plot here.
But it's okay. Only one story.
But there is more to it. So I enjoyed interviewing that guard.
My goodness.
And I enjoyed because that man, he finally reached Delhi, and then nothing was known about him. There was an inquiry how the guardless train managed to cover 80 kilometers. So it's an interesting story, and I enjoy these realistic stories.
Stranger than fiction.
And there's a lot of comedy in it, a lot of realism, which I enjoy.
Last question: do you think you gave a hint of the answer, but do you think that creative writing can be learned, or are you born with it?
No, no, I don't think creative writing can be learned at all.
Yeah.
You need to have a very different way of looking at things. I will just give you one short example.
Yeah.
You have to be an observant, then a participant to be a writer. That's all I can say. If you are a good observer, you can be a
Yeah.
good story teller. But if you are a participant, then you sometimes get too involved in it
Yeah.
that you miss the finer things.
I see.
So that's what I feel. That you need to be a good observer of life, of human nature, of the small things which most of us miss. But a writer, he sometimes, he pinpoints at it. This is the thing.
Thank.
And human nature is so complex. It's full of so many interesting twists and turns.
Thank you so much for sharing all, downloading all this many years of experience. Much appreciated, Aditya. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Pleasure talking to you.